Against the Storm is one of my favorite roguelites, and they just released the Keepers of the Stone DLC last year. This DLC adds 2 new maps, Coastal Grove and Ashen Thicket, as well as a new race of villagers in the form of frogs. I love these new additions, but there are a couple of things to consider before deciding if you actually need to buy that DLC for yourself. So let's get into it. Before we talk about the DLC specific content, I think it's worth mentioning the DLC came with a couple big free content updates to the base game. So even if you don't buy the DLC, you can still access those elements, those updates. Resource-wise, the largest update to the game was the addition of fishing. While similar to other gathering in general, fishing has 2 nice twists. First, you don't get your resources until you finish catching the whole pond. However, you can choose to get your resources early if you want at the cost of depleting the rest of the pond. So this makes fishing feel different and also creates some cost benefit or risk reward mechanics if you want to cash out early. Realistically though, I basically always just fish the whole pond. Second, you can use packs of crops to increase your fishing yield, and that just adds another nice resource management pipeline that the game is well known for. The other new gathering resource that was added to the game was salt, which is a mined resource like copper or coal. They also released 2 new complex needs, boots, another clothing item like coats, and paste, another complex food. As a whole, I quite like these base game updates and rebalancing. I think the addition of more alternative pipelines and recipes allows for more viable ways to reach certain goals, like being able to make copper bars out of scales that you fish instead of copper that you have to mine. Or how salt can be a great way to increase your complex food output with a mineable resource. At the same time, I do think the addition of boots, and especially paste, can change how you have to balance your needs across races. Honestly, it's just harder to have overlapping needs across the different species now. This is especially true if you don't have that DLC and therefore have no frogs. For example, paste is only used by frogs and harpies, so if you have no frogs, it's only used by harpies for base game players. Another balancing act, the addition of frogs also changed around the race's production and resolve bonuses. They're largely the same, but there are a couple of small changes, like foxes feeling less reliable to me now with the loss of their rainwater bonus. Again, on net, I think this balancing was good for the game by nature of adding more fun pathways and alternative ingredients for existing recipes. But I do think it comes to some cost to difficulty and game balancing, which are marginally worsened if you have the base game without the DLC. These updates also added some new cornerstones, buildings, orders, things like that. Some of those are DLC exclusive and some of them are not. These generally just add some more good run variety that we love, but are not worth going through one by one. So while the base game got these updates across all maps, the 2 DLC maps interact with those 2 new resource nodes more closely. The Coastal Grove was the new biome that was added in the original DLC patch, and it interacts more closely with fishing. The main twist or mechanic of Coastal Grove comes in the form of expeditions. While you still get some of your blueprints from Reputation, you also get some of them through these fishing expeditions. To go on these expeditions, you have to load up your dock with different resources, one of which is either algae or fish, the other is certain simple foods, and then you need complex food and services as you get to further expeditions. Along with these blueprints, these expeditions allow you to get additional resources and perks, and you can use more resources to get a higher chance at better rewards. As a whole, I thought this expedition mechanic made the map feel pretty distinct from others. While you don't get a specific blueprint choice from expeditions, you can select a blueprint category, which is a nice but different type of control. These expeditions require fishing resources, i.e. algae and fish, but notably, the trees also give you some algae, so you don't have to fish at the start if you don't want to, or if you just can't find a pond. Also, even just the treasure rewards from the expeditions can be nice for getting new resources or service goods, packs of goods that you don't have production lines for, again, keeping in mind that these rewards are randomized. I think the main trade-off is that these expeditions require a specific focus on certain items and resources and foods. Notably, you have to get complex food fairly quickly, and you have to get specific combos of complex food as well later on. If you don't focus on those things sufficiently, this map can just feel more restricted than other maps because you would get fewer blueprints, have to sync resources, things like that. Basically, I have a couple of balancing concerns you can throw at this map, but I think the benefit of these new mechanics of hunting for blueprints, scalable rewards, where you can offer more resources to get more loot, I think those things are fun. And I think that balancing trade-off is worth it because it creates a more unique map to play. Final thing with Coastal Grove, if you fish enough on this map with packs of crops, you can also use algae as another sacrifice resource in the hearth. I don't think I ever did this across my runs, but just another playstyle variant that probably affects some other players more than me. Ashen Thicket is the second DLC map that was added. It was added in a later patch, so it wasn't there on DLC day 1. While the Coastal Grove focuses on fishing, unique ways to get blueprints, Ashen Thicket focuses on mining and custom cornerstones, which are the perks or modifiers you get in Against the Storm. As you mine resources, you unlock Thunderblight shards, which can be used to make these custom cornerstones. These custom cornerstones take the place of some cornerstones you would normally get on certain years, so you get the same number of total cornerstones on this map compared to others. These custom cornerstones, of course, have some restrictions on what they can be. They all take the format of every X, gain Y, with the opportunity to add a debuff to either increase the gain or decrease whatever is needed to proc this effect. For example, one custom cornerstone might be every 4 trade routes, gain +1 resolve to the beavers, while adding a debuff might make this effect happen every 3 trade routes instead, or it might give you +2 resolve instead of +1. There are always 4 choices for both every X effect and the gain Y effect. So you have that classic RNG roguelite choice format there. I really loved Ashen Thicket, even more than Coastal Grove. These custom cornerstones were fun. They allow for some great flexibility, and you can create some busted builds and settlements with them. For example, I had one run where one of my cornerstones gave me raw food as I produced complex food. And that gave me basically an infinite supply of food, which was fun to observe and manage. This biome also focuses on interacting with mines, along with that newly added salt resource. I hadn't really focused on mining as much before this biome was added, so the opportunity and the nudge to focus on that was nice, and now I mine more reliably in my settlements. I don't really have anything negative to say about Ashen Thicket. I guess you could argue that these custom cornerstones are too limited in what they can do, but I don't really feel that way. I also don't have those same balance concerns with Ashen Thicket as I did with Coastal Grove, but maybe some other players do. As a whole, this DLC adds these 2 good biomes that have new ways to interact with more standardized mechanics in the form of new ways to get blueprints and custom cornerstones. The other main addition DLC-wise are the frogs, as the 6th playable race. I'm not going to spend as long talking about them, but briefly, they get their production bonus from stone and brick-related buildings, and they get their resolve bonus from rainwater-related buildings. Their hearth perk makes newcomers come quicker, and I found that to be a great perk for starting at your settlement, just getting more settlers, villagers early on. I think housing is probably the most unique part about frogs, isn't just variety or needs related. Notably, they can't get their basic housing needs met with basic houses. So, in other words, the only way you can get frogs successfully housed is with the frog-specific homes. Those homes require bricks to build, and packs of building materials, and rainwater in order to upgrade. I think this increased housing barrier makes the frogs a more challenging species for newcomers. They just have more needs. But similar to mining in Ashen Thicket, I think the frog can be a great intro to complex housing and housing upgrades for newer players. I don't have that much more to say about the frogs other than I like them, and of course, adding a 6th species in general creates some more run-to-run variety because you're just more likely to get different species run to run. So what's my verdict on the Keepers of the Stone DLC? The reason I want to talk about that free update first before talking about the DLC is to point out that you don't need to buy the DLC to get new content. While there are some balance gaps without having the frogs, the base game still got that new variety in the form of fishing and salt, as well as all the accompanying new recipes and rebalance as a result. Because of that, you don't need that DLC to enjoy Against the Storm. But as for the actual DLC itself, I loved it. It added some great variety in the form of 2 new biomes, allow you to interact with blueprints and cornerstones in a novel and enjoyable way. I really loved how you can get some crazy combos with those custom cornerstones in the Ashen Thicket biome. I think the frogs have some unique qualities as well that increase that run-to-run variety. In that sense, purely content-wise, I think the DLC is worth grabbing because it adds quality content to an amazing roguelite. I do want to address, though, that this is a $15 DLC, and that's one of the bigger criticisms that I've seen lobbed at the DLC from people that don't like it. Some people thought they just weren't getting their value for that price point. And that's why the devs added the 2nd biome, Ashen Thicket, later on in the DLC after it already launched. It's always hard to say value for dollar, whether a game is worth picking up, because that depends on so many individual factors. For me though, this DLC was well worth it because, first and foremost, the content is good. And second, I played this game a ton since buying the DLC. Easily more than 15 hours, which passes a crude $1 for 1 hour fun metric that I sometimes think about for valuing whether a game is worth it. Along with that, I'll just say the DLC has already gone on sale for a little under $10, so you don't have to pay full price for it. And with that, a huge shout out to all of our channel members for helping support the channel. Please like this video to help me out in the algorithm, and thanks for watching.